Thank you for joining For Our Special Kids, where we openly and honestly discuss the magic and the mess of raising a child with special needs. We are thrilled to have you here and hope this time provides you with some wonder and wisdom. I'm your host, Jennifer Lansing. Let's get started. In November, we hosted our first community Zoom with Stephen Forth, the Behavior Dude. It was an incredible hour with such great teaching moments. And today I am going to share it with you. So we talked about how to avoid the rush to create more connection with your child in the mornings, how or how not to feed the dog, teenager issues, toddler bedtime issues or stories, the fact that duct tape is not a safe restrainer. You'll get more of that later. Safety and why that is the number one priority. How to have more compassion for ourselves and our children, how to pass off a situation to your partner when you're feeling overwhelmed, and quite a few other things. So while this is a little bit longer than typical episode, it's so worth it. I really, truly appreciate Stephen's time and hope to have him on again for another live community Zoom, because I know you all are going to take so much away. So speaking of that, after listening, let me know what your takeaway is by emailing me at jen@forOurSpecialKids. As always, I hope you enjoy and let me know what you think. All right. Welcome, everyone. This is Jen Lansing, your host of For Our Special Kids. I am really excited about our first community Zoom. This is an honor. I love, Stephen, that you're taking some time out of your day in Hawaii to join us. Thank you very, very much for that. I'll do a quick little intro of Stephen. If you guys haven't listened to the episodes with our Behavior Dude, please do. They're chock full of information. I adore them. So Stephen Forth has been helping families and schools and me and you, our listeners, understand the language of behavior and providing very practical behavioral solutions for 20 years. During a career in theater, you were kind of asked to be a part of a speech and language school in Austin, which is really exciting. And then you started learning more about the ABA programs, and you became a board certified associate behavior analyst in 2004. And that's really where things started moving in this direction, right, Stephen? You earned your master's in curriculum and instruction and applied behavioral analysis from Arizona State University and moved to the San Francisco Bay Area and became the clinical director of Gateway Learning. And that's kind of where it all really started moving into your own practice. So welcome. Thank you, Stephen, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Will you just give us a snippet of what ABA is for people that are joining us?
Well, ABA is a science that, started coming into practice about 50 years ago, and it was originally the work of B.F. Skinner, which most people have heard about, Skinner boxes and the rats and all that type of rigmarole. But in the end, what we ended up doing was applying that to human behavior and saying, how can this science that we've learned in the lab about what living organisms will do when they're reinforced, when they're punished, how does that apply to complex individuals like we perceive ourselves to be? My work has definitely shown me that we're a lot more like animals than we think we are, for sure. But that's where we learned it because it was so analog. And then the science kind of turned into a practical application around the work of Ibar Lovaas down in Southern California. About 30, 40 years ago, they opened up clinics to work with individuals who had really severe behavioral issues, primarily kids on the autism spectrum, because those were the ones that we understood the least. And what they realized in that process there is a lot of really great techniques to help people grow and learn, even when they were not clued into social approval the way that what you would consider to be neurotypical people were. But those principles we ended up learning in that process actually gave us a beautiful doorway into all children's behavior and all human behavior in a lot of ways. So it seeded the work in a way where we were able to extract the principles that were what I would say are humane. And because punishment is punishment and it can come in many, many forms. But what I do, even how I've taken the work of ABA and moved it in, is I've tried to eliminate all punishment aspects from the work completely. And that's where the field's been moving for a long time, and really work on the principles of reinforcement. Our society works on a principle of reinforcement. When we give people money to go to work, people voluntarily go to work to receive reinforcement. No one has to force them to get out of the bed in the morning and get their cup of coffee and go out the door on a daily basis. They know I'm receiving enough reinforcement to go and do that. And so, I originally trained in the area of autism, but, where my work currently stands is in a much more diverse field. Primarily, my clients are kids with what they have the label of attention deficit disorder, things like that. The kids that are having a really hard time fitting into the educational box that society has designed for them. And so what I do is try to help adults interpret this difference, this sensory diversity that these kids are experiencing, and help them understand it in a way that they can convey to the kids what the expectations are and connect that directly to what the children want in the situation, because we do things because we get something out of it. And that's the clarity that I'm trying to bring to parents, is, trying to put a lot of those old parenting techniques in the past with, shame, disapproval, and really move into a new future where we use the tools that are available to us nowadays, because thankfully physical correction isn't really a tool that we have in our tool bag anymore, but our parents did. And we have this generational understanding about shame and disapproval that now has no backup, because we don't have corporal punishment in our back pocket threatening these kids. We just have a dirty look on our face or a mean voice to try to scare them. But the really smart kids see through it, and they go, there's nothing behind that. And actually that type of attention is pretty exciting to some kids. So that's where I've taken the work, is to try to help people understand how we can move forward in a positive behavioral way without using disapproval, without using shame, with having a lot of compassion for that individual that's in front of us. They're our child, but they're also a sovereign individual who has their own wants and needs.
It's when we talked in the last little episode that came out on Monday, the little mini episode, and you talked about reinforcement, whether after they achieved their goals, they might get money, or they might get time with the video, or they might get something. And part of me, when I was editing it, truthfully, was like, I don't know if I like this, because it made me think, oh, well, are they only doing it for that? And is there any just like internal, like, yes, I want to not slap my mom, or I want to have soft, gentle hands because that feels good to me. Like that's the right decision. So I know I just dove right in and we didn't even talk about that question, but I'm just curious. So does it eventually instill an internal value?
I believe it does. Yes, absolutely. It's a process in behaviorism we call pairing, is this idea that I got what I wanted when my parents were happy, so therefore it's good that my parents are happy. And we all operated under that. If mom's not happy, nobody's happy. If we're neurotypical, we tried to keep our parents happy because we knew a happy parent was that parent who was going to give us ice cream or keys to the car or whatever. So we all made that association naturally at some point in time, that, we like to see people around us happy because reinforcement flows to us when the people around us are happy. Now, kids who have sensory differences or communication issues get a distorted view of that interaction. And a lot of kids who can't achieve what other neurotypical kids might be able to achieve don't get a lot of positive feedback. So most of the feedback they're getting is corrective feedback. And in my opinion, that becomes their language of love after a while. That's the majority of the input they get. So they say, hey, as long as that adult is looking at me and talking to me, I'm good. It doesn't matter if it's praise or correction. As a matter of fact, correction comes in and hits my nervous system in a really profound way. And praise is usually pretty light-handed. So those kids with sensory differences really absorb that correction in a way that we don't intend. And so my work is a lot about turning that paradigm around, that attention paradigm, and trying to help them understand actually, when I'm happy with you, you get what you want, right? So you want to see me smile. And it's trying to reestablish that connection that we take for granted in neurotypical individuals, and so that's really where it comes from and what it develops.
Right. Huh. All right. So I have a question, and this actually came from a conversation with Alex and me. So Alex, feel free to pop in here. We were having this issue with, obviously, and it's getting a little bit better, and we're trying to stay positive, but with Teal swatting and showing her frustration that way. And we were chatting because a lot of times I will get that before we're going to school.
Mm-hmm.
And so you had said in the first episode that we did, if they don't do what you want them to do, then you wait until they need something from you. And then you say, oh, no, remember, elephant brain here. Is it the elephant that has the memory? Elephant brain here. I needed you to do that before you get that. All right, well, let's play this scenario out. We're going to school. We're trying to get ready for school. And Alex and I were like, well, what do you do? I mean, do you just be late for school?
It's tough. Like most of the situations that I deal with, we're giving incentives to kids for making it into the car on time. Like that we always do a proactive approach of giving reinforcement for reaching the goals. In Teal's case, she may not understand that proactive approach completely. So it's a little bit more difficult to set her up for success in these situations. But in reality, what you would do is you would set up a sequence of events where she gets to spend more time with you when she gets ready earlier. So like when she's ready, you minimize the attention, the eye contact when she's being resistant to getting ready. And when she's going along with you, you maximize it. That's really what it comes down to. So she understands, wow, I get a lot of great attention, eye contact, hugs, everything else like that when I put my clothes on, when I brush my teeth, when I get in the car, all of those little checkpoints along the way. With kids who are developmentally kind of over 5 years old, we would have a executive functioning checklist that says, these are all the things you do before you get my attention, before you get the iPad, before you get whatever you're looking for. So we set it up where we minimize the attention during the routine, and especially when we see resistance to the routine, and we maximize the attention once the routine is complete or finished or anything else like that. So it's going to be harder with Teal. Just being honest with you here, you're going to have to do it in a more moment by moment thing. Now you could create a little token system for her that says, okay, I brush my teeth, I get a token, I get this, I get a token, I get this, I get a token. And at the end, we get to have a little party. So she understands, oh, I have to get through all of these little tokens in order to get this attention party from mom and dad at the end, whatever that looks like, And so you could put it in a way that she could understand without using a 9-system 24-point chart.
Right.
It is a visual step process. So she goes, oh, I'm trying to get to the end of this. Right now, she is just drinking your attention at every step, saying the harder I make it for them, the more attention I get to go through this process. But if I make it easy for them, I get this beautiful thing at the end. And that's really, how you would adapt it in the situation.
I have no idea how to do that. Because she's not walking to the car. She's not brushing her own teeth without assistance. She's not putting on her clothes without assistance. I mean, we do everything for her, with her. Alex, I don't know if you're listening, but if you want to pop in. Oh yeah, he is. He just unmuted.
I'm here.
How would we do that?
Yeah, so it's tougher with her because she doesn't have that long-term contingency in place, and she actually needs the physical assistance. So what I would do is what I call task analysis, is say, what parts of this routine can she do by herself? What parts can she not do by herself? I would give her a lot of, praise, reinforcement, hugs, whatever it is, when she went through the parts that I know she can do by herself. Where she needs to be prompted, we naturally would do that without her having a behavior. We would just jump in and go like, okay, I know she needs help with this. I'm not going to wait for her to resist. I'm just going to help her with this, and move through that sequence. And then any other part that she can be independent in, we let her move through by herself, give her reinforcement when she's done, and then help her with the next part she needs help with. But really all this swatting and all the other things that you're getting in the middle of this, that's an attempt to slow you down, to make you forget what you want her to do. Her behavior would rather you pay attention to the swatting than her having to put the clothes on by herself or put her arm through the jacket or whatever it may be at that point in time that she needs help with. So it's really much more granular and microscopic with her because she doesn't have the physical ability to do it herself. And that's where it gets really tricky. I don't work with a lot of kids, honestly, that have physical disabilities. Most of this is neurodiversity that I'm working with, and so most of these kids can do it. They're choosing not to do it, and that's really where my sweet spot is working with those kids. A physical therapist, occupational therapist would help you guys with the microscopic parts.
Yeah. Alex?
No, I still think there's a framework based on what I'm hearing, which would still be kind of a checklist to get her to motivate to the next thing, even if she's not necessarily able to do it physically on her own. So, I know Jen says she's not walking, but we just walked in and said, okay, Teal, it's time to go to the bathroom. And she walked to the bathroom and she gets to the bathroom by herself. And then.
So I have to start getting her up at 6 a.m.
I think it would just be more adapting around.
Right. And rushing is not our friend when it comes to any of these things, is it, Stephen? And
because she can sense it.
Yeah.
She can sense when you're in a rush, and that's a great time to get your attention.
We're always in a rush before school.
Yeah. And not being in a rush by getting up earlier is one solution, but Alex is onto something here.
Yeah.
We can, I'm going to use the word handicap our kids by doing too much for them. When we know that they have the physical ability to do something, then we ask ourselves, how can we motivate them to do it? What would be meaningful to them? And with her, it could be a hug. It could be just hanging out with dad. It could be whatever the little things are that you guys have in that moment-to-moment interaction that make it richer and better for her.
Okay.
And what she's getting, the big reaction she's getting out of you swatting her could be big pleased reactions as opposed to big aggravated reactions. I'm betting she's not making much of a distinction, honestly. So what you do as a parent is become an actor, so to speak, and say, you know what, I'm just going to minimize the big reactions to the behavior and maximize the big reactions to the independence, to whenever she stretches herself, whenever she pushes herself to that next level, because I know she's always being asked to do that. So just shifting your focus and your attention to what she achieves rather than what she's not achieving is really the basic mindset. And then it's a lot of acting around that, acting like you're not aggravated when you are aggravated, and acting like you're extremely pleased when you're just relieved that she did it. That's big.
The other layer on this is she's an empath. So it doesn't matter if I'm not showing the energy. She will laugh at me. Literally, if I'm like looking down, not engaging, just breathing, she'll be like, because she feels it. So, all right, we have some things to implement, don't we, Alex? We have things to talk about.
And just a little note about the laughing probably does get your attention. So, not only is she an empath and she's feeling you and she's probably finding a little humor in the situation, but also she knows when she changes her behavioral approach, it changes yours. And being a little more stoic during the laughter is probably going to be part of it, because when she sees it doesn't gain any traction, then she'll be like, okay, getting ready is really what gets the attention. So.
All right. Okay.
Just as a final thought, I want to give you a little credit, Jen, because you do ask her to make good choices and she does respond to that. And I think one way to look at it is she's not necessarily motivated by the reward aspect of it, but she does want to get things done. And she is proud of herself when she does. So I think there's a lineage there that we can run with. Sorry, I just wanted to finish that thought.
Oh, and that's good. Jen needs to hear her reinforcement as well as a mother, that she's given her these opportunities to make the good choices. And when she makes the good choices quickly, then that's really what it is. It's all about time delay in the end. If she makes a good choice, being very quick about giving her praise, about saying, I'm so proud of, you took care of this by yourself, being specific with that praise. I love how you put your arm into the jacket really quickly today. Thank you so much. That's what we're looking for. A little physical touch. Like, she really registers physical touch, obviously. So like really giving her those little pats, because a lot of times when kids aren't doing what we want them to do, we end up touching them a lot. So they associate our touch with not going along with the routine. So really trying to be super minimal and light when you're prompting her, and nice and deep pressure whenever she's going along well. So.
This is so good. All right. I have another one. This is from a mom of a 2-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
How do you work with a child who gives their dog food and then gets mad when the dog eats it, but freaks out when his mom tells him not to give the dog food?
That's a really tough one, because you're not only dealing with the behavior of the mom, obviously, that's my forte. You're also dealing with the behavior of the 2-year-old and the dog. One of the tenets of my work is you cannot make somebody else do a behavior. You can only respond in a way that will either discourage the behavior in the future or not. And that's a really tough one. I personally am a what should the kid be doing instead type of approach. And I actually threw this question at my partner the other night, because you sent this one to me earlier. So I thought about this one. I was like, wow, she really threw me a curveball here, because she wants me to do dog training and kid training at the same time. But I'm a parent trainer. So I say, what does the parent do?
Yeah.
And because the dog's going to react to the food. You can't do anything about that. The dog's going to want to eat the food. You can't do anything about that. The kid likes to offer the food and see the dog come up to him, but he gets really upset when the food disappears out of his hand, because maybe he didn't intend for that food to disappear out of his hand. And that's where it gets tough right there. And so my intervention in the situation would ostensibly be putting a bowl right under the toddler's chair at dinner time and saying, if you want to feed the dog, put the food in the bowl. Because at that point in time, he lets go of the food. He knows that it's going to disappear out of his hand. That's not a surprise, because he's put it in the bowl. And that also gets the bad habit of feeding the dog at that table kind of out of the picture, because that can get out of control really quickly, because the dog's going to do what the dog's going to do. He's going to take food that is offered. And if you offer it to him, he's going to expect everybody. So we want some behavioral consistency across the dog and the kid. So I would say put the bowl under the table and say, if you want to feed the dog, you put the food in the bowl. You don't give it straight to the dog. Now, as far as the big reaction when the dog eats it or when the mom corrects him, to me, there's an attention component in there as well. That big reaction probably produces a big reaction from the parent. And then there's this cycle of attention that gets going at that point in time. And the dog's running around, the kid's screaming, and there's a lot of sensory input at that point in time that even though the kid may look upset with the whole situation, it's like watching a circus. Like there's a feeling of sensory input that is really intense. He's crying, she's trying to correct him, the dog's running around trying to get some more food. So there's a whole cycle there that I think the bowl intervention would be really good for, because then it's very clear where the food should go. You could even put, a little target down in the bottom, so he likes dropping it down into the bowl for the dog. Make it fun, make it easy. But in the end, minimizing your reaction to the kid doing it would be the last step. If he does it, then we'll tell him next time he needs to put it in the bowl, that type of thing, but not getting too big on him when he does feed the dog. And my partner said, put the dog away during dinner. I was like, yeah, that's another great antecedent intervention right there. Just don't let the dog come into the dining area, because that's what we think about. If we can't control our own reactions or the reactions of others, how do we set up the environment differently where the behavior really can occur? So that's my short answer to it.
I actually think your partner's spot on. And then if there is that concept of you do still want to feed the dog, okay, well then when we feed the dog in the utility room, or we feed the dog here. I mean, sorry, I like that one best. But okay, so then as you were talking about this, let's say putting dropping the food into the bowl target, well then that becomes, in my mind, a 2-year-old's like fun, crazy, awesome game. And I'm never going to put the food in my mouth as a 2-year-old. I mean, how would you deal? I know this is a tricky one. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, you're dealing with 2-year-old feeding issues, which is a universal problem right there.
That's
like this is a whole nother ball of wax, where my daughter, she'll feed everyone in the room before she puts food in her mouth. She'll go to me, she'll go to her mom, she'll go to wherever somebody will take the food besides her mouth. So this isn't an uncommon problem that the 2-year-old doesn't want to eat. And the reality is that 2-year-olds' digestive systems are changing really drastically at that point in time. They may be weaning, they may be growing, they may have hit a growth spurt and stop, but we expect a constant input of food. But 2-year-olds don't do that. 2-year-olds eat when they're hungry and don't eat when they're not hungry. And I say trust that personally. I know people have a lot of problems with it. But in the end, I think that you're just going with this natural rhythm of a being who's growing and is tasting new foods and trying different textures and creating aversions and likes in their food. And you're witnessing in your mind, the parental responsibility is to shovel as much food in that pie hole as possible.
Yeah.
That's not always going to be necessary. In our society, most kids get fed pretty well. They eat when they need to, but as parents, we have this perceived responsibility that it has to be a certain amount at the mealtime. But 2-year-olds are also grazers. They'll eat a little bit at a time. They would probably prefer to eat 5 small snacks a day rather than 3 big meals.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the way their digestive systems work, because their stomachs are the size of their fists. You can't load them down the way you can an older kid.
Going kind of back to that intuitive parenting thing is just really following your child. We've done that with Teal. We trust when she's hungry, she eats. When she doesn't, she doesn't. It is shocking that when she gets a lemon tart from her dad, she seems to devour it no matter where she is in the meal process. But we have really tried to follow her lead, and it's been miraculous for her. Alex is now going to comment on the citron tart. Alex?
No, that's your daughter wanted to say hi.
Oh, hi, Teal. Do you want to say hi? No?
She's waving.
Okay, perfect. Hi, Teal. But yeah, following their lead is a huge thing. So when you look at teenage kids we're in the 6-year-old stage. We're not anywhere near a teenager, but I do know we have quite a few listeners that said, I can't make it. Can you please record it? I'm really interested in this. And I did receive some really amazing feedback from Bridget, who said, this is my first episode that I listened, and I just have already implemented things that Stephen mentioned. So thank you for all of that. Your episodes with us has really helped. But I do know that we have some teenagers. And what do you run into as some of the biggest issues with teenagers, and how do you suggest parents deal with it? Because that's a whole new world. It's a whole new world. Yeah, I did it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, that's another ball of wax, like a 2-year-old eating at you. It's a bigger ball of wax. But really, having raised a teenager already in my life, what I can reflect on personally and the problems that I come into contact with professionally really are about in my opinion, parenting is handing off all the responsibilities of parenting to the child before they walk out the door. At 18 or whenever they decide to finally leave, that's really what our job is as parents. In I would say more traditional cultures in the past, I think there's sort of a mentality that you're always my child and you'll always be dependent upon me and you will always need me for something. And I'm okay with that role. A lot of parents are okay being permanent parents and a lot of kids are okay being permanent children. But in my mind, what we should be doing is working towards actualized adults that are independent, that love us because they want to, not because they need to. They're choosing to still interact with us, not because we're giving them what they need to survive, but because they're out there providing for themselves. And we're a social relationship they have in their life. So to me, what I'm trying to do with parents of teenagers is literally take everything that the parent is doing for the kid that they may have been doing since birth for that kid, but not realize that child needs to do it for themselves one day. And making a list in the form of my self-monitoring system that I talked about last time with goal work and saying, yeah, I got ready on time. I did my laundry. I cooked my own food. Me, myself, I gave my daughter, my 14-year-old daughter, a budget at 14 and said, okay, we're going to go shopping. And I want you to buy the food and learn how to cook it and do that. And she got pretty excited about it until she realized how hard it was. And then it was a struggle. But in the end, I have a child that's cooking gourmet meals in her house her freshman year in college because she knows how to cook. And because I did not cook every single meal for her, I at some point said, you know what, I'm going to stop doing this and I'm going to hand this over to you. And then you take this responsibility for yourself to budget, to think about nutrition, to think about all of these things. And that's what we don't think about as parents a lot, because once we've gotten into parenting, we really enjoy it and it becomes our identity, and it becomes who we are as people. And we don't think about the fact that that process has got to gradually stop one day too, if we're going to bring another fully actualized human into this world. To me, that's the biggest challenge, is actually the parents letting go and allowing those kids to make the mistakes, to do the amazing things while they're still living with us, and have that safety net of us while they're making those mistakes. But frequently parents do everything. I mean, I know I was eating pizza and wearing dirty laundry my freshman year of college because I really didn't have those life skills until somebody said, hey, you smell, dude. You need to go take a shower. You need to do your laundry and all that stuff. Oh yeah, I got to go do all that stuff now. But my mom did that for me before. So to me, that's the biggest challenge with raising a teenager, is figuring out what to let go of and at what time to let go of it.
Well, and that's something that you talked about, or we talked about early on in that first episode, was, gosh, it's really not about the kids. Mm-hmm. You're parent coaching. I mean, this is what you're doing. You are working with parents and their behaviors and how it affects everybody else. But it's the parent that you're training. Yeah. All right.
Parents also have the longer behavioral histories too. That's just it, is that what I said early in an episode is that behavior's like water, and it cuts a deeper channel over time. And when I'm dealing with adults, I'm dealing with channels that are 30, 40, 50 years old, as opposed to kids whose channels are 2 to 15 years old, 16 years old. So behavior change is much more difficult for an older individual than it is for a younger individual, just by neural structure, just by the simple fact of how we remember things and how we learn things.
Right. So there's no hope for me, but there's hope for Teal.
I don't know. I'd say you're starting to learn, Jen.
Oh, thanks. Alex, what do you want to say?
Oh, no, I just figured that's when I'm supposed to chime in.
That's when you're supposed to chime in and say, I'm incredible. Yeah, and I'm super.
And he laughs.
Super. All right. Well, hey, Alex, do you have any questions, or Diane, that you think would be valuable for our listeners?
This is amazing, and I have to tell you the truth. It's the same approach I used with horses. Mm-hmm. We had foals, 2 foals every year that we sold as weanlings, and our goal was always that they would be able to be led off by a 5-year-old child. And that's the reputation we got, because our theory was just what you're saying: make the right thing easy and make the wrong thing hard.
Yeah.
And so my question is, what do you do when let's say a little bit older than 2, maybe a 3 or 4-year-old all at once decides, I'm not going to bed, and if you put me in my bed, I'm not going to stay in my bed, and I don't care what you do to me, I'm just not going to do it.
That's a pretty tough one too, for sure. Really, I kind of encourage parents to have a kind of a cutoff time when they leave the room that's consistent every night, so the kid comes to expect that, because a lot of the behavior that we see in that moment in time that you're talking about, Diane, is an effort to extend the amount of attention and time that the parent stays in the room. So it's like, I don't want you to leave. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that, and keep you there, keep you there, keep you there. And what I do with my systems is I usually say, okay, you were in bed by, let's say 8:15, and I'm going to leave the room at 8:45. So for one, you get ready for bed on time, you're going to get the maximum amount of time with me that you possibly can get.
Ooh, that's good.
And you also get reinforcement on the chart for, being in bed on time. And so there's 2 reinforcers that are running right there. And then the consistency of you walking out at a certain time shows them that there is a limit to the amount of attention that they're going to get. Now, there's always the phenomena of the kid running out of the room, wanting some milk or wanting some water, But in that scenario, what I say is pack all of those things into the list for getting ready for bed. So everything that kid is using as an excuse to get out of the room, you say, oh, that's part of getting ready for bed now. So that last drink of water, that last snack, that last whatever, it's all part of your routine now. So you try to, and it takes a week or two to figure out exactly all of the tricks in their bag to get out of the room. But basically, you make a space for all of those behaviors to occur in the right time. And if you provide that structure to a kid, and say, hey, this is when this happens, this is when this happens, and I'm going to walk out of the room at this time, usually they fall in line pretty easily. In the moment, there's not much you can do. It's really about a long game here. The short game is you just manage the behavior and try not to reinforce it in the moment.
Yeah.
But the long game is creating the structure where the kid feels less anxiety because they know exactly when they get what they want. And that's really the key to mending that situation you're talking about. It's long-term planning, really.
Wow. So where were you when I was raising my wild children? No, I'm
kidding. That one that's hosting the show? You told me she was a handful. I wish I was.
No, actually, they were both very good. So what if that doesn't work?
Well, in my experience,
is duct tape possible?
Yeah,
duct tape.
Physical restraint.
No, lock the door. No, I'm kidding.
Physical boundaries are good, but I never would suggest containing someone in a space ethically. And the problem is when you do something that's restricting, as soon as that restricting thing, whether it's a person holding them in place or duct tape or a door, as soon as that's not there, they're going to engage in the behavior again. What I'm trying to do is go from external pressure to internal pressure. It's like, what is going to create the internal pressure in that person to do the right thing, and not the external pressures of people disapproving of them or restraining them or anything else like that. What am I going to do to show them it is in their best interest and they get what they want when they go along with our program? That's really the approach that I take. Traditional parenting is very much externally pressure based. I'm scaring you into do something. I'm shaming you into doing something. I'm trying to make it so uncomfortable when you do something that you don't want to do it anymore. But what happens when that parent is not there?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm just going to go crazy and go wild and do whatever I want. But if I've learned over time, it's in my best interest and I get better sleep and everybody's happy and I get what I want when I go along with the program, then it becomes an internal change. And that's what we're looking for with behavior work and not relying on that external pressure. So the duct tape's a funny comment, but it actually speaks to what we're really trying to avoid in this situation, which is creating physical boundaries and pressure and shame and disapproval as the controlling mechanisms, and instilling an internal value in that individual to do the right thing.
Yeah. So from a legal note, we do definitely encourage you never to use duct tape, and none of us are legally encouraging any of physical strains. Okay, just wanted to say it for for those legal people. It's said. Okay, Diane, go ahead.
Okay, so my niece's little guy, who happens to be about 2.5, he doesn't stay in his bed, and he goes to the landing upstairs, looking down the stairwell, looking at them, and refuses to stay in his bedroom. My niece said, what? I mean, she put it out there on social media, and it's like, what do you do? I mean, I can shut the door, but he bangs his head on the door. And so then he finally goes and gets his blanket and falls asleep on the landing.
That's what I was thinking. Move the bed.
Yeah,
if he wants to sleep on the landing,
is a little bit dangerous, honestly, in this scenario. The 2-year-old upstairs, where he can access the stairs very easily, because that creates a safety issue that you have to respond to. So I would say negotiating the physical environment where he might be downstairs instead of upstairs until he learns to control himself in this situation, because safety is everything. Thank you for the disclaimer about duct tape, but in any situation where there's a safety issue, safety is always primary and first, and you deal with a safety situation in the moment. So if your kid's standing at the top of the stairs, obviously you've got to go up there and help them get back to bed. But creating contingencies like, okay, I'm going to read you a story for 30 minutes until you fall asleep, rather than just walk out of the room and hope that you stay in the room. To me, he's just needing more attention. He's not tired. Maybe you give him deep pressure while he's lying in bed with a heavy blanket or something like that to help relax, to help his body relax. teach him some breathing techniques, do some yoga with him at night, because a 2-year-old's body is the regulation isn't there yet. They can't just go, okay, I'm going to relax now. They feel like they have no control over it. So teaching them tools on how to relax is really the right thing. And also filling him up with attention. I mean, loving him up and hugging him up until he's like, okay, go away, mommy. Like that's probably what he's really needing in that period of time. So seeing it from his point of view, like getting in your kid's shoes and seeing the world through their eyes, is really what I promote in this situation, and not using our adult ideas of what should and shouldn't happen as the guidepost. You have to meet your kid where they're actually at and understand what their needs are and fill their cup up till it's overflowing. And then you can walk away and have a silent night. Like that's really what it comes down to. But if you're just trying to be done with parenting as soon as that kid hits the bed, it's not working. That's why I say plan on at least a half hour of alone time with your kid when they're under 4 or 5 years old.
That's really, really good feedback, Stephen, because I will tell you, most of us, especially parents with special needs children, are exhausted by the time bed comes and our patience is down. We have been working all day trying to make things happen. We've been struggling with all sorts of different things. By the time bedtime comes, I mean, it's like, please just go to sleep. But if we change that mindset, I think that's what I really heard you say, is you dedicate 30 minutes to bedtime.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I was actually wondering, do you set a timer? Like, because kids do like to see things like, do you put something in the room that says, okay, this is what we're going to do. Here's the plan. Here's the checklist. Here's your routine. And any child can do that. We need to start doing it for Teal. We have a routine. We always have a routine. She pretty much goes through the same routine every day. We just don't have a checklist for it. So putting a checklist up there, showing her where she's at on it, she starts learning. Every kid can do that no matter where they are developmentally, I believe. But the timer and the process, like, and then do you say something like, okay, now when that timer goes off, mommy's leaving, and this means that you'll stay in the bed? Like, do you say that?
Yeah. And for kids that can understand it, I that might be a goal that we say, is that when the lights go out, I stay in the bed. Some parents that I work with have a green light, red light system, where the light's red, you stay in the bedroom, the light turns green, you can come out. I didn't encourage that, but a lot of people do that. But giving them clear visual markers of the routine, like taking pictures of their entire routine if they can't read, and putting it up in a vertical list on there and checking it off as you go. The kids love that type of stuff. They love to check off the list and see what's next. These are supports that we used in special education for years. But people go, oh, I have a neurotypical kid, I don't need to do this. Well, anybody under 5 needs accommodations. Like when it comes down to it, they are not really understanding all the verbal input that we're giving them. They're not holding multiple things in their head. Their executive functioning is still developing at that point in time. So giving them all those visual supports, and the timer is one of the best supports. And even if they can't tell time, I'm going to do a product plug here. There's a thing called the time timer, which is a visual representation of time. You can see the time go away, kind of like a pie slice. It disappears into the clock. So when all the red's gone, the time is up. And you can say, hey, look, in 5 minutes, 3 minutes, 2 minutes, okay, I'm leaving. What causes anxiety in a kid is not knowing when something else is going to happen. So if you just say, okay, I'm leaving the room now, that's a jolt to their system. They're like, wait, my main provider of my love and food is walking out of the room right now, and I didn't expect it. That's really
scary.
Jolting. Yeah, kid. And then they're going to turn off the lights and I'm going to be in the dark.
Right.
So that's a lot of stuff for a young mind to deal with. But if you give them time to think about it and prepare for it with a timer, then you've given them a visual tool to help them understand what we expect to have happen in the situation. We assume our expectations are clear. They're never clear. They're never as clear as they need to be to reduce the anxiety and help the kid relax. So anything you can do to provide those visual supports, the physical supports, the relaxation support, the deep breathing support, all of those type of things are going to help. And then when the kid actually achieves it is the sweet moment in time where you can reinforce and you can be like, wow, last night you did this. This is so wonderful. Hey, you want some extra 5 minutes on the iPad today? Because you did so good last night going to sleep. And that's where behavior change occurs. is when you catch someone doing it the right way and you can find an opportunity to reinforce it, either through your praise or through an iPad or anything else. I create a structured system so the parents know when and how to give reinforcement, but you can do that on the fly too. You can do it with most kids just by praising them or surprising them with a nice little treat for going along with your program. And that's what it is your program, not theirs. And what you're trying to do is merge it where it's both of your programs, that he wants to do it and you want to do it. So therefore everybody's on board.
This has been amazing. Once again, my mind is blown by conversations with Stephen Forth. All right. What's the number one thing that you think parents could do that would positively impact themselves and their relationships with their children? I know. I'll stall for you. Do you want me to tap dance?
No,
I'll tap dance. Okay, go.
The number one thing. Wow, that's big. I mean, I did mention First Then last time, and I can't tell you how incredibly powerful that one is. Again, when you set up a contingency that you're willing to offer a kid something to do something when they're having a behavior. So they're having a hard time and you say, hey, you can watch your iPad if you just do this thing you're having a hard time with right now. You know what those things are that your kid has a hard time with. So be proactive with offering those type of incentives. And I call it First Then. First, you get ready for bed, then you can not watch the iPad right before bed usually, but you get my drift, is that you're setting it up as a proactive thing. You're trying to help them understand how they get what they want before they have the behavior, because once they have the behavior, it's too late. If you offer that reinforcer while they're having a behavior, you're associating that behavior with that reinforcer, and they think having a behavior is how to get it. So that's the fundamental underlying principle of all these reinforcement systems, is being proactive. So be proactive. You know where your kids have a hard time. Anticipate it, especially if you're willing to offer them something to do it. Do it before they have the behavior and not afterwards. So that's the big pivotal thing. And then I would say on a more meta global level, have compassion for your child. They're just learning this world. You've been in this world a long time. You know what should happen, or at least you think you do, but they're just learning. So give them time, watch them, follow them, try to figure out what they need in the situation and try to merge that with what you need rather than trying to enforce your way of being onto them. Because every kid comes into this world unique. Every kid has different needs. And the art of parenting is identifying what those needs really are and helping them meet them in the most appropriate way possible.
Yay. I will tell you that my mother caught me saying First and Then to Teal a couple of days ago. I think she heard it. I was like, yes. Thank you, Mom. All right. Hey, I love it. Go enjoy your time in the beautiful islands. Stephen has joined us from Hawaii. He's taken an hour out of his time. So I truly appreciate it. We'll put this up because I think this conversation was just incredibly valuable. If anyone wants to share a takeaway that they had, now is the time to share your takeaway for our conversation, because I always think it's important for you, Stephen, to know what other people are taking away. So I'm going to give you mine, and it's realizing that, one, we need to get up earlier for Teal, just in the mornings, because I'm always rushed and she feels it, which I don't like that. I don't like getting her up earlier, but that means we just need to get her in bed earlier, and that's okay. But then the other takeaway is giving her, and it might be from Alex, is just giving her more credit. Like, she can do more, and I need to empower that with the checklist that you provide, that you're encouraging me to do. So that's my takeaway. Anyone else want to share their takeaway? Yes, Diane.
I think for me, it was Stephen's, one of his last statements that said, we've been here a long time, some of us more than others. And it's easy to expect a child to just know this stuff, but they don't. And patience is key. I listened the other day to Stephen, and I really liked the First and Then and all of that, but I'm learning. I don't know how my kids grew up. I must have screwed it all up.
Nice. And Alex, anything that you want to share? I know you're with Teal, so it might be a little hard to unmute.
I found this very, very, very helpful. I think the two things that I probably took away are to give Teal more credit and more opportunity to, I don't know what the right word is, but achieve the things on the checklist, because she's much more capable and totally understanding of that. And then I like the comment around compassion. Like that's a great takeaway. And I did have a question, but I'll follow up with it later.
Oh, no, go ahead. Ask the question.
Well, it's just a simple one, but I was thinking, and this isn't really for my parenting, but I was going to ask Stephen, is there a way when you have a frustrating moment as a parent, it's maybe a good way to ask it, what have you seen as the most effective way to tap out with your partner and allow your partner to kind of take over in that moment from a child's perspective? So say, for instance, trying to get something done, it's not working, you're very frustrated, and then you go, okay, I don't want to cry uncle, but on some level you need to say, I'm too frustrated in this moment. How do I hand that off to my partner in a successful way with the child, from the child's perspective?
Well, that's a great question, Alex. And what I would say to that is, first, before you tap out, try to do some self-regulation techniques in front of Teal. Deep breathing, things that are helping you calm down. So she's frustrated you. And, as parents, we try to hide our frustration and we try to think that we're not frustrated, but we're actually telegraphing it in a huge way. And Teal is very empathetic from what you guys have told me. She can sense the frustration. You're not fooling anyone. But what we want to do is teach our kids how to deal with frustration by modeling it in front of them. So I would say, before you tap out, take 5 deep breaths. Go to that happy place in your mind. Come visit me in Hawaii on the beach. Like whatever it is that makes you feel better, try that first, and don't be afraid of doing it right in front of Teal, because that's what we want Teal to learn too, is what does it look like when somebody's frustrated, and handling it and managing it. So that's the first thing. But if you feel like that didn't work and you need to tap out, asking for help is the other thing adults aren't very good at. And so looking at Jen and saying, Jen, I need some help here, and doing it in the calmest way you can, trying to do your breathing technique first, get to a good place and look at Jen and say, Jen, can you help me out? And even though it sounds like a very logical, sensible thing to say right now, it is the hardest thing to do in the moment, to look at your partner who you may have some dynamic of competition or conflict with all the time, and just ask for help. The universe gives help amazingly when we ask for it. It just flows towards us. But that's our problem, is that we can't ask for it. And that's my experience as a person myself. And I find it to be the greatest difficulty for other people as well. And saying, I'm going to take 5 minutes and then I'm going to come back. Because part of our fear is that we're abandoning the situation, that we're giving up, that our child's going to perceive we're abandoning them, that our partner's going to perceive that we're abandoning them, and we're not going to come back. But you tell them, I am going to come back. I just need time for myself to regroup. And don't be afraid of saying that right in front of your kid. In my opinion, that's much better than exploding and creating a bad example and reinforcing the behavior we don't want to see. Like, all of those things have the potential of happening if we can't learn to take a break ourselves.
So Alex asked that question because that's what I do. He's the calm one.
No, I didn't.
Oh, yeah, you did. It's all good. I'm not mad at all. It's actually a really good question, because I have a hard time regulating my emotions. I'm a very emotional person. You guys know that. I mean, hello, I cry at the drop of a hat. And guess what? The pendulum swings from sad to happy and angry all over the place, So I think it's really good for me to start demonstrating to Teal how I am trying to manage my emotion. And it's really not to her. It's a lot of times she, I think, sees how Alex and I interact, how I get upset about really silly things. So I think it's a great question, and I will try to implement more of that. And yes, Alex, you can too, but I got that under question. That was good.
Well, I mean, I'm sure Alex has his own experience too, in the situation where maybe he's not showing it the way you are, but he's feeling it on a really internal level. I mean, as men, we're acculturated not to telegraph too much, but that doesn't mean it's not happening on the inside. And just because we're not showing it in a bigger way doesn't mean we're not feeling it and then subverting it and pushing it down and causing a lot of pain to ourselves. So there's that too. I know you think you're the histrionic one and I am all over the place, but that's not necessarily the case. Everybody has these emotions. We're just acculturated to deal with them in different ways.
Oh, no, she is. No, but my question was really rooted more in just kind of the handoff, and I really appreciate the answer.
Yeah, the hand. I know
Very
I took it into a deep place, but in the end, just looking at someone and saying, I need some help here, or I need to take a break. That's one of the goals I make for my kids all the time. I asked for a break calmly, something very simple like that. And that defuses so many situations. And when the kid can't ask for the break, I say, well, then the adult should. If you feel like this is going in a non-productive direction, you go ahead, take 5 minutes, tell the kid you'll come back and you'll deal with it again in 5 minutes, and go to your happy place and take care of yourself. Really, it works.
Thank you so much.
Amazing. Super fun, Stephen. Thank you very much for spending time with us. It's a little over an hour, but it was so valuable. And go lay on the beach.
Thank you.
Thank you. And for everyone that wants to reach out to you, they can either go to thebehaviordude.com. Oh, correct.
Behaviordude.help or my name with my letters.com. So that's Stephen Forth, Stephen with a V, and then bcba.com. So.
Okay. Wonderful. And I just value your time so much. So thank you, and go have a great time. Happy holidays.
You guys have a wonderful day.
Bye. Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you found 1 or 2 meaningful nuggets of information to make your day better. If you think there's value in what we do, please take a moment to tell another friend, family member, or a caregiver. We'd love to hear from you at forourspecialkids@gmail.com. You can send in a question, a comment, a topic that you'd like to learn more about, or if you'd like us to highlight a certain person, please send that information to us. It makes our show so much better and so much more valuable for you. Our Facebook and Instagram handle is For Our Special Kids. And finally, remember to witness the wonder and the wisdom within yourself and others. Until next time.